Hey friends, welcome to the School of Hard Knocks with Darcie, a place where we become unstuck from trauma and grounded in our healing. I'm your host, Darcie, and I'm a proud multi-graduate of the School of Hard Knocks. Life has a way of teaching us lessons we never asked for, but here we take those lessons and turn them into healing, strength, and self-leadership. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive in.
Just a quick reminder. This podcast shares personal stories and lived experiences. It's not therapy. It's not counseling or legal advice. If you need professional help, please reach out to a licensed provider. Welcome back, School of Hard Knocks. Class is in session. I am here with our Rebuilt series. We are currently in our season of blooming. So I'm here today with Krystina Dixon. Let me tell you a little bit about Krystina. She's an ordained chaplain, author, Christian life and a legacy coach, and the founder of Breathe Life Coaching. She has a master's in counseling and triple board certifications in biblical counseling, Christian life counseling, Christian life coaching, and Christian mental health. Krystina specializes in equipping and empowering high capacity Christian women to break free from the strongholds of limiting beliefs and sabotaging behavior so they can inhale peace and exhale purpose. This sounds like it's right up my alley. Welcome to the School of Hard Knocks, Krystina.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate you.
Awesome. Well, hey, listen, take me back. So you weren't always a biblical coach and into counseling and all of the things. What was your journey like to turn that light bulb on for you that this is the direction I need to go?
So I've always had a heart for helping people and animals. That was my thing. Started as a vet tech and then realized that animals came with people and maybe I should care about them too.
That's a great
but
observation.
but I grew up in a traumatic childhood, and I always preface anytime I talk about any of my relationships, there's never any disrespect, dishonoring, disparaging, anything like that. God's walked me through forgiveness, and it's just to tell my story, not to malign anyone else. But I grew up in a very traumatic childhood. I don't know how familiar you are with, there's something called the adverse childhood experiences, and there's 10 of them, and it's a rating system that's used to evaluate the trauma that a person has gone through in their childhood. And typically, the higher that score is, the higher the number is, the more chaos there was in their life. Typically, not always, there's a correlation to some instability in their current life as well. And so I won the lottery and got all 10 of those aces. So the fact that I'm here with you today, I mean, technically speaking, statistically, I should not be alive. Spiritually speaking, I should not be alive. I've had multiple near-death experiences by which the only explanation is that God saved me. I think now looking back, I can say that He chose me, He gave me a purpose, He was not going to let anything get in the way. But I didn't grow up with God, like knowing God. Like I grew up with God, but I didn't grow up knowing God. Wasn't raised in a spiritual household, religious household, anything like that. I first was sort of introduced to this idea of Jesus and God. In high school, a friend of mine invited me to a youth group. And I mean, hey, it was fun. So I enjoyed going. I went. I did not go to church regularly, anything like that. God was not something that was just ever present or mentioned in the house. So I developed this intense love for God, but I didn't really quite understand it. I didn't even really know who He was or why I loved Him. I just knew that I felt like He was the only really stable thing in my life. He was the only reliable person, at that point, being like, I don't even know what this God thing is. I just know that when I talk about God, I feel safe. And I feel like I don't have to worry about how I'm going to survive. I don't have to adapt to anything or anyone because that's what I learned to do as a child. I learned very quickly to become a chameleon, to figure out what I needed to do to make you happy so you didn't hurt me. And that led to, as you can imagine, some very toxic, abusive patterns relationally into my adult life. And I just never really felt like there was anything else. Like this was it. This was my deck of cards that I was dealt, and I was going to survive. Over time, I started off with this victim mentality as a child. Like, you're powerless. There's not a lot you can do as a child. So I felt like a victim. Eventually, I kind of coming into adolescence, when you get that adolescence like invincibility kind of thing going on, I was
Yeah.
like, no, I'm not a victim, I'm a survivor.
Mm.
So then I got to survivor. I still didn't quite feel right, but hey, okay, it is what it is. I survived. Wonderful. Well, there came a day about 2 years ago-ish where I actually was working at my dream job. I was a counselor, children and family crisis counselor. As you can imagine, trauma was something that I was very familiar with, so very comfortable with, and kind of where my passion lied was in helping people with trauma because I pretty much felt like an expert on it long before I had any academic background on it. So I came home, or I was working this job that I really loved, and another offer came along. I really thought I was going to just die at this job. Another offer came along, and it was a really, really good one. And I prayed about it, and I was just so sure that God was like, "Yep, that's where I want you to go. I want you to do that." So I said, "All right, cool." So I took it. 3 months later, they lost their funding, and I was out.
Mm.
So I struggled a lot with like, why? Why would you have me leave this job that I loved, that I just there was it was everything. It was the pinnacle for me. Um, so I come home and I tell my husband, hey, listen, I lost my job. And to be honest, I worked in the nonprofit sector, so I really didn't, it's not like I was raking it in. My
Yeah.
husband, my husband was the breadwinner. So I felt okay about it. I mean, I was sad, I was disappointed, but I wasn't panicked. So my husband sat and listened to me and nodded and all the things. And then he just kind of paused for a second and took a breath and he said, so, yeah, I lost my job today too.
Oh no.
So I tell you that because I want you to understand, like, in this moment, time froze for me. Like it was like a TV show, like where legit, where it just everything stops and you're like, "Er." And I immediately went back into this child who is homeless, who is scared, who is starving, who is um, alone, who is just very fearful and scared to death. So I go into fix it mode. What can I do? What do I need to do? How can I? What we're going to end up on the streets. That's just the only logical explanation. And God gently in my spirit just kind of paused time and took me back through my life, through like this carousel of images through my life of some really, really, when I say near death, like near death moments where I was scared and alone. And he just said, I was there and I was there and I was there and I'm here. So don't be afraid. And in that moment, I kind of came to myself. And my husband and I know people don't believe it, but at the exact same time, we looked at each other and we said, well, obviously God's about to show up in a really big way. And the fact that we both felt that way, we both said it, it wasn't something that either of us could have concocted. So as I'm crying in fear and laughing at this, the irony of us saying the same thing at the same time, it became very clear to me that God was showing me how fear had been the idol that I worshiped my whole life. Fear had been dictating my decisions, my behavior, my personality, my thoughts, my emotions, everything. All of those moments that he pointed at, I was here, I was here, I was here, showed me that I had a calling to take that fear, convert it into fuel. I had walked through the fire, and it was time for me to walk back, carrying water for other women who were going through similar experiences. So I started Breathe Life Coaching. And while I did that, and I would love to tell you that it was like, okay, God, no problem. I'll do that.
Yeah.
That is not what it looked like.
Yeah. Real life.
It was, there's one thing you can count on me for. Is I'm going to tell you the real
Yes.
human dirty parts about it. So I was like, okay, God, I'm going to do the life coaching. I hear you. I've got all the credentials. I've got all this academic background. I'm comfortable with it. Fine, we'll do that. But I'm also going to go back to my old job. And I don't know how God talks to you. I hope he's very sweet and gentle and kind, but to me, that doesn't work. So he goes, okay, sure. We're still doing it your way, huh? 1 foot in, 1 foot out. You still don't trust me. So I said, okay, I'm all in. So I started Breathe Life Coaching, love what I do, end up writing 3 books in a year that I had no intentions of writing. Loving life, everything's great, but there's a piece of my story that I left out on purpose. And the reason I leave out is because it's so vital to see how my life ended before you see this part, not where my life ended. My life's not over, but where I'm at today.
I think
versus...
all day you are looking so good for having life be over.
So as I'm walking through this process of doing Breathe Life Coaching, I kind of took the journey that God took me on, which is trusting and surrendering and obeying, and what that looks like. And not the pretty, hey, pray it away, let go and let God version, right? I'm not knocking that. There is value to that. But this was like, girl, parts of it are gonna suck. And the thing is that women need to know that when that voice comes up in your mind that says you're not doing it right because it hurts, because you're sad, because you're not happy about it. If God loved you, it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't feel like this. He's walked me through all of that. And it is so valuable for us to know that, because there's power that lies there. When we buy into false narratives and frameworks that are built around that, that's where the enemy loves to live, to try to stop us from walking out that obedience. But how do we obey if we can't surrender? And how do we surrender if we don't trust? So that's the breathe journey. That's how we learn to inhale peace and exhale purpose. So he walked me through all of this, but there, as I would share my story, there was a piece I would leave out. Why? Because I wanted people to look at me like I had it all together, had it all figured out. Trust me, I can help you. You can have this life too. You can have one even better. So the part of my story that I leave out, or had left out, God convicted me on, because I went through, so I am on my 3rd marriage and final marriage. And I hope he hears that, because it is till death do us part. But there was a lot of shame around the fact that I had 2 divorces. And growing up the way that I didn't exactly have a parenting role model. So in my first marriage, I got pregnant with my daughter. And after the panic subsided, because I was so afraid that I was going to pass on the generational trauma, I was so intent. I mean, just laser focused on being a good mom. It was the most important thing in my life. I was not going to be the mom that I had. I was going to do everything right, which, by the way, yeah, that was the first mistake, thinking I could do everything right. So that marriage collapses. I get remarried. I have my son. Same thing. Parenting is everything. It is everything. I'm pouring everything I have into these kids. We get divorced. I'm still giving it my all. So I get married the third time. The day before we get married, I get baptized, not realizing that when we step out in faith and declare it, quite often there is something that comes behind that is not always pleasant. So first week was great, wonderful. I was reading my Bible. I was talking to my husband, like, hey, look, God's talking to Moses, like they're buddies, like they're face to face. They're sitting down having donuts and some coffee. And like, man, I wish God would talk like that to me. I wish he would be like, move. And I'd move when he said move.
Yes.
And he said, move. A week later, he said, move. And I was like, cool, I'm all in. I don't really like where I live anyway. We're doing this. I was high on the hog. Like, this is great. God's talking to me. I can take on the world.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't realize was that when he told me to move, he did not intend for my children to go with me. Now, remember, everything in my life was driven by being a good mom. How was I going to be a good mom and walk away from my children? And it felt a lot like punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So this comes up, rattles me. I'm on the ground. When I tell you guttural, ugly, snot bubbles, just no words, primal torture. And I'm talking to God and I'm wrestling with God. And I'm like, why? Why my babies? Why my babies? And he kept saying, whose babies? Whose babies? So I catch on and I'm like, okay, they're your babies. They're your babies. But why wouldn't they come with me? Why would you leave them in a home that isn't Christian? Why would you do all of these things? And what God said to me very, very clearly in my spirit was, I sacrificed my son. Are you willing to sacrifice yours to glorify my kingdom? And I fell apart. And I tried to negotiate. And I said, but who's going to take care of my kids? Like, if I say yes to this, my kids, they're doomed. They're going to hell. Like, how do I do that? How do I make that happen? And I don't know if you've ever heard God laugh, but he laughed. He kind of chuckled and he said, if you think I'm going to forsake your children because of your obedience, you really don't know me at all. So in that moment, I realized that he was obviously a much better parent than I would ever be. And so I said yes. And I left my children behind. Now, I will tell you that we now have a fantastic relationship, and it really is amazing what God's done with it. And I can look back now and see I'm actually a better mom for it. But in the throes of it, I could not make sense of it. But I gave in and I said yes. So there was so much shame for me. And what I didn't realize was in this quest to be a good mom, I had made my children idols. I was codependent. I worshiped my children. And looking back, anytime I put anything between me and God, he has stripped me of it. So I learned not to ever do that again, because that was the most painful, relationships came and went and fell apart, and that was painful, but not like this. This was far more painful than any physical, emotional, psychological, or sexual abuse I'd ever had. This was the worst thing. So I see my kids, we're talking on the phone, all of these things. And every single time I fell apart all over again, every time I had to say goodbye. And for about 5 years, this was the routine. And I would just cry and say, God, why? Like, what did I do wrong? I just wanted to be a good mom. And finally, years later, he said to me in my spirit, you were a good mom. You are a good mom. In fact, this makes you a better mom. But what I needed you to do was level up to obedient daughter. And when he reframed that for me, he said, that's the part I want her to hear. That's the part you need to share because there's so much shame. And that is where both the enemy and God do their best work. In the shame of self-worth and the grief of obedience. We don't talk about the fact that obedience hurts sometimes. Feels a lot like heartbreak sometimes. I often think of Abraham and Isaac. We read the Bible. Bible says God told Abraham, sacrifice Isaac. And like the implication that the way we read it is Abraham was like, cool, God, let's do it. And Isaac was like, yeah, man, I'm in.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the book is about God. Like it's focused on God and what God did with it. And it should be. But what happens is when in that human experience, it doesn't feel like that. There's so many times in the Bible say immediately they did it, right? Well, what if I don't do it immediately? What if I hesitate? Or, Noah just listened to God and built this boat against what everybody else had to say. It did not. We don't even talk about Mary. Mary's like 16, like basically looked at as like a hoe,
Yes.
like how painful all of that must have been. And so for me, my calling is to bring the humanity to these experiences and let women know it's okay. The enemy will step in and tell you that you're not a good Christian. You're not doing this right. You're not good enough. You're not worthy. God can't use you because of the way it feels to do it. But what's amazing is those things that you think you're losing, the very, very, very best parts of those things, God redeems. You just put one foot in front of the other, God redeems it. So he gave me an image one day that I love to share, and it was of Lot's wife, because I was pondering, like, of all the people in the Bible, we're told to remember Lot's wife. Okay. Well, I've heard lots of sermons preach about how it's about don't look back, don't look back. And I'm not saying that that's not right. I personally, this is not theologically based, but I personally feel like if we don't look back, how do we know how far God brought us?
Mm-hmm.
But for me, when I was contemplating this and kind of um, mulling it over, God showed me an image of Lot's wife where it wasn't that she looked back. It was that she stopped moving forward.
Mm.
And what happened with her, and again, this is just an image. I'm not saying this is what the Bible says. But the image was she became encased in the salt of her tears because she was feeling not only the grief of what she was leaving behind and what she lost or what she thought she was going to lose, but it was this collision with the grief of what would never be. And that is paralyzing. And I think a lot of women get stuck there. So that's why I'm here, is to help women navigate those sticky points.
Wow. Wow. I've been taking notes this whole time.
It's a lot. It can be overwhelming.
It's not overwhelming. It is beautiful. And, it's only beautiful to people that are currently grounded in their healing. Like when I'm hearing everything that you're saying, Milo's going to bark. Milo, hold on. We love real life.
Yes, we do.
when people hear that, if they are grounded in their healing, they totally understand it. Like, God uses everything for a purpose. So I wrote down some things like you didn't grow up in a real like relationship with God, right? Like you knew that God existed, but you didn't go to church. There wasn't like family Bible studies and things like that. That's exactly how my childhood was. I always knew that there was a God, but I knew nothing about him for the majority of my life because no one introduced me to him. And 10 years ago, my husband and I had dove really deep into our faith. And then 6 years ago, my dad became a survivor of a workplace shooting. And instead of backing away, I dove deeper into my faith. My dad came home from brain rehab 2 years after he was shot. And my husband and I took care of him for 3 years and 8 months here in our home, dove deeper into my faith. And unfortunately, but fortunately, I found my dad deceased 6 months ago today in our house. So, when I tell people that, it's like, dang, 6 months ago and you're doing this good. How are you doing okay? And it's because I trust God. I know that he does everything in perfect timing, in his timing, in pure perfection. My dad, when he was initially shot over 6 years ago, he could have been taken from me that day. We had over 6 extra years together. And although it was hard because he was physically disabled and we had to do everything for him, the hugs, the smooches that he got so good at, the hand holding, the moments that God knew that I needed, but I feel like I'm in that same place where, okay, it's time to be obedient. I mean, my husband and I have been doing the Read the Bible challenge in a year. And we started doing that about a month before my dad died. So I was already like doing it. And I had started it out just reading it on my own, but then I would read it out loud. And my husband's like, "What are you doing?" Just reading the Bible. He's like, "Oh, that's new." I said, "Yes, it is. Do you want me to read it to you?" And he said, "Yeah." And now today was day 212. And we read it to each other, like we've really taken this on. We got super integrated in our church. We volunteer at the church, we volunteer at the shelter. It was like I felt I needed God to know that I was so thankful for every single thing that he's given to me in over 6 years. And I'm not mad. I was mad for a second when my dad died because I was like, come on. Like, this is so much stuff in my life because my whole life has been full of trauma. Um, but he planned everything so perfectly. So, how can you be upset about that? And when you say about being a chameleon child, I feel that on so many different levels of blending in so you don't stand out, so you don't cause attention because causing attention means violence. And that's not a good place to be. So I can feel all of that. I'm really excited to speak with so many people that have taken these things that happened to us in the past, learn how to move through them, and then really concrete their faith, their relationship with God, because there's nothing you're ever going to find in this world that's better than that. Like it feels
No,
literally almost impossible.
I think if you were to write down a list of everyone who let you down and how they let you down, what you needed and what they didn't give, which isn't that hard for a lot of us because we like to keep score like that. All of those things, God is like can fill that for you. God, like there's just no, he just never lets you down. He's faithful. But you and I both know when you're in whatever you're in, especially the trauma itself, it's really hard to hear like, oh, be grateful. How can you not be happy? Like what and when you and I know what we're talking about because we're on the other side of it, for someone who's in it, it can send this message of you must be broken
Mhm.
because you're not happy that your dad died and is in heaven. You're not like you love God and you're a Christian and you're trying to do all the things right, because that's another thing. Perfectionism is very big in the this sabotaging that we do, the checking the list, checking the boxes. So if you're mad at God, if you're frustrated, if you're disappointed in God, it feels so wrong. And the enemy goes, yeah, yeah. Ugh, I guess you're not good enough, are you? I guess you're not the person that you thought you were. I guess he can't use you. And we get stuck. And that's where the enemy does some really, really good work. And if you can just learn, and it's not me sitting there telling you it's going to get better, it's going to be okay. There's actually neuroscience that backs rewiring the way we think. And you can literally take every thought captive so that you're not trying to serve two masters.
I mean, that's such an accurate statement. I just got my practitioner in NLP, and it was so interesting going through that to just learn, we are what we think. We are what we watch, what we hear, everything, and when we're not being positive, but it's the positive thing for me is something I've been able to do for a long time. Hence why nobody knew that there was ever anything going on. I was really good about, oh no, this is my family life is great. Like principles, like, is there something going on with you? No, everything is great. Like nobody would have ever have known. And so this has been a new journey for me for not even maybe a year. I mean, it was so hard to grasp because yeah, at first it was like, why would you have my dad get shot? I was pissed.
Yeah.
I told my pastor, I said, I don't know what the F is going on here, but
Yeah.
this is not what the plan is supposed to be. Like, what is going on? My dad has already had such a hard life, and I've had such a hard life. Why does this have to continue and carry on? And my pastor said, Darcie, it's fine to be angry. He's your father. Talk to him about it. Bring it to his attention. Say the things that you feel like you have to say. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I would be super fearful to even be mad at my dad and like be aggressive because he's dad, but like, God, like you want me to be like, what did you do? And he's like, have a conversation. So I started just having conversations. And then I realized every time I was having a moment and I would just have to fall to my knees and just say, take it. The whole thing, I can't, like, there's literally nothing I can do. I can't love my dad out of this. I can't fix what's happening. I have to wholeheartedly have faith that you've planned this out for something that's going to be great. And every time I would have one of those moments, my dad would do something different. Say a word, feed himself for the first time, be able to hold himself in a sitting position. And my mind is being blown. I'm recording because first of all, doctors weren't believing because every girl thinks her dad's Superman. But I knew right away that I was going to tell people this is my God story. This is my God story all the way up until the day that my dad died. And the way he died was so beautiful and so peaceful. And he was smiling like he saw the Lord. And I know he did. And it was a smile like, Darce, it's real. It's real. I'm going. Like, keep doing what you're doing because I want to see you up here, So
Yeah,
it was just like
right.
such a like beautiful thing. And when you realize what God's doing with you, and needing you to share this so that people can see, like, give it to him. Don't be like me, where, oh, I would feel so bad because I like protecting people and I'm just supposed to give all of my crap to Jesus. That feels mean. And I'm not a mean person. And then you start diving into the Bible and you're like, oh, so he wants you to do that. Well, that's a little different.
Well, and what you just described is when I said, I started as victim and then I went to survivor. And then what God did was turned it into purpose. He gave
Mhm.
purpose to that pain. And when that happens, and I've watched women in that moment where it shifts for them, it is incredibly beautiful because we are very, very powerful when we are aligned with God. And that's obviously what the enemy doesn't want. But I don't think most women really understand the capacity that they actually have when they're in partnership.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to trust any person with everything, it's God. I mean, I've had conversations with the evil ones since my dad's come home, just almost like laughing at him. I don't know why you're wasting your time. This is not the household for it. I've seen too much. I know too much. You can literally take every single thing monetarily that I have or every person around me. I'm not the one for it. I've seen what God can do as a miracle with my dad. And now I am currently living my nightmare. My nightmare was obviously my dad dying. My dad was only 66 years old. He was only 60 when he was shot. I wasn't even 40. This is not what I thought my life was going to look like. Although it's the hardest thing I've ever been through and it is my nightmare, I have done wonderful these last 6 months. I have just, when people are like, that's so interesting. How? And I say, if you had somebody that you knew who won tickets to paradise, would you be mad? Would you be mad? Would you be like, oh man, that's gonna suck? Like, why would you go to a magical like atmosphere? That's horrible. That's what I feel like. I feel like my dad got his ticket to paradise. I feel like he is just whole again and full and running and jumping and just him, who he is destined and designed to be. The missing of him, that human feeling is here, but I've got so much joy in my heart knowing this is eventually where I'm ending up too. And he's the first person I'm going to run to. And it's softened all of this for me because God allowed it to be soft for me. He allowed it, for my faith to continue to grow in the promise that he has. So instead of being a wreck with my hair sticking out and ripping hair out and all of this, I'm actually really okay. I mean, I've been doing interviews all day today. You're my sixth interview. I've been
Wow.
chilling and talking to women about how we're just baddies and we can make it through everything and God's awesome. And I'm just like, yeah. So it's
What
been
is
a
a beautiful
beautiful
story?
day.
Yeah, it is a beautiful story. And I think that, people on the outside who maybe aren't believers would look at you and be like, are you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs? Like,
Mhm.
but it really is. And that is your story is like, look, this is pretty bad.
Yeah.
This is pretty bad. And yet there is this peace and this hope and this faith. I think a lot of times we feel like faith is something that we have to do,
Mhm.
and it can get all kinds of twisted because that's really not what it's about. And I have been hopeless. I know how that feels, and I don't want it for anybody.
Yeah.
Anybody.
Well, let's say that we have some women that are listening that are like, ooh, I think that Krystina Dixon has some really great things to say. How would they get not in contact with you, but how would they get involved with your program?
So there's a few options. I am on, the Facebook platform. I'm on all the platforms. It's on Linktree has all my socials, but going to my website, I offer something that's called the Stronghold Spotlight. And it is a free assessment that you can do that kind of gives you some insight into how your operating system, your autopilot, if you will, can interfere with what you're trying to accomplish. For instance, people pleasing, how you're looking for connection and approval and love and affection, but how you're actually kind of sabotaging that a little bit. Um, so there's that, and the second part to that is what is a free discovery call, and it's not a coaching call, it's not a sales call, it's just a call with me to go over that assessment and explore how you might be limiting your thought patterns that are causing some of this stickiness to happen, whether it's in relationships, whether it's at work, whatever it may be, any arena of your life. And we just explore that. And then from there, you can decide what you want to do with it. For people who aren't necessarily interested in coaching or don't want to take an assessment, I do have a devotional trilogy that I wrote. There is an order to it. It's 3 books, and the first works on trust, the second on surrender, and the third on obedience. And they're intended to be a set that you walk through together. But there's some very, 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 very light coaching in it. But it's all biblical. And those are probably the 2 avenues that I would recommend. But of course, you can always email me too at breathelifecoachingllc@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, I love it. I love the whole thing. Like it lifts my whole entire heart and soul.
Yeah.
Every time I get to sit with somebody who has every single reason to go with the grain of life, and the ones who are walking with God are going against the grain. And as much as you think that that would sound rough, it's just the most incredible journey you can ever imagine being on. I mean, the freedom of it, the peace of it, the joy of it, the getting to really intimately know God is such a different level than anything I ever experienced in my life. I mean, like I said, my husband and I are doing this. We're 212 days in. We are finishing Isaiah, which is going to be our 22nd book. So we've been through 22 books. And one of my biggest takeaways, besides God is good all the time, which I think a lot of us already know, is that the Sabbath is huge. The Sabbath is huge. And that was not something that I knew my entire life because we weren't raised to learn about this kind of stuff. And it sure as heck wasn't talked about. Somebody doesn't hire you in corporate America and say, and by the way, Sundays are off the schedule because we need to be, taking God up on the Sabbath. Never knew that. Came across it barely a month into the Bible, and I was so shooketh. I was like, oh my, I would have been stoned to death because I had no idea how serious that this was. I do not work on the Sabbath, and I have not in probably 4 months. I don't take my phone to church with me. Like, this is my day with God, doing the things that He wants to put before me to bring me peace and relaxation and calmness and that reset. And man, has that ever made a difference in my life? Just that. But learning all of this things about him, it has been so phenomenal. I highly recommend anybody who's wanting to learn about God to do a challenge like that. Hold yourself accountable. And this one's really cool. It's in a chronological order. So, like, sometimes it's like Isaiah, but then they'll throw in Kings and then a Psalm will be in because it's all relational. So it puts characters together where you start learning stuff. So this is something I'll do for the rest of my life now. And I know that every time over, I'll pick up something new because whatever season that you're in your life is when God's going to say, well, you learned that the last time, but you're going to learn this one this time. So it's been a really cool thing. This has been really cool. I'm so happy and just proud of you. Like, I love it when women in particular stick to it and say, I know that God has something better for me out there. And not just that, but I'm going to show other women that they have a chance too. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of women struggle with knowing what that thing is. Because I know
Yeah.
for me, it was like calling. What's a calling? I haven't called. What is this? And it goes back to like it's not something you do, it's who you are, it's who God is through you. And I think if you really want to know yourself, know God. Because if you can trust that He is who He says He is, you can trust that you are who He says you are.
This is very real. Like my prayer always is that people understand how real that this is. How their lives can completely change. People are going to view you different. You're going to view yourself different. The way you approach things in your life is going to be different. You just are different in such an incredible way.
But just to throw this out there too, sometimes people hear different, and that's the enemy can latch onto that too. Like
Mhm.
different. Because most of us, there are exceptions, but most of us don't like change. Most of us, even though we say we want to read the Bible in a year, but then there's something that continually stops us from doing it. There's lots of ways that we sabotage ourselves through the tools that the enemy uses that kind of live in this world of fear. And it's the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of what that change is going to look like. It's being different. What does that mean? What is that going to mean for my relationships? What if I have these friends over here that aren't Christians? The value that I place on that connection and that affection and that approval and that love and that community, it can just be very overwhelming and scary. And one thing that I always like to point out is the Bible says, do not be afraid. It doesn't say don't be scared.
Right.
And that was something I learned in this walk with Jesus, and I'm still learning, is that when I feel like what I'm being asked to do is risky, I've really never been safer. It's not risky. I'm doing it for the one who is sovereign over everything. So there's no risk. It just feels scary. And the Bible doesn't say don't be scared. It's okay to be scared. We have scared for a reason. And God is big enough to handle all of it. Afraid is an identity. And we're not to be afraid. And that differentiation really matters.
It does really matter. And, I like to point out too, when I'm talking to people, when they are feeling that certain way, I just say, well, look back to how many things you've tried in your life when you have felt that. Like, should I get on a plane? Should I go skydiving? Should I take my children here? Should I take this job? Should I be with this person? You're literally making decisions all throughout your entire life that you don't know what the outcome is. And everybody's outcome is different the majority of the time. Some people fly and love it. Some people fly and hate it. I very rarely have met somebody that started their walk with Christ and was like, yeah, this has been the worst thing I've ever come at. There's this person who died for me and wants to save that. There's no way. I very rarely. So, if different is one of your activator words, because we say activator instead of trigger, if it's one of your activator words, I'd encourage you to think about where you currently are in your life right now that you're considering this kind of in-depth walk. Because typically people are brought to this level of, I need something that's going to bring me peace and solace and comfort and joy. And if it's learning about the Lord, then that's what it is. And that's where your different is going to be. If you're feeling that way, you may want to take a little bit of accountability and a little bit of look inside, like, are you ready for a change? Because following God is not always easy, right? Like, I've been called a Bible thumper more times than I can even imagine. I remember the first time it happened and I said, wow, that's awesome, because I have been called a lot of stuff in my life and that one I'm totally okay with. Like, go ahead. I really don't care. That's bizarre to me. So your walk can feel judged sometimes, but then you also have to take a look at everybody else's perspective. We're all out here learning. That's what this whole thing is about, is trying to learn. And if something is going to benefit you in a healthy way, I'd probably encourage you to take a look at it. And my walk with God has been strong, and that's why I am where I am.
And I mean, Jesus asked the man at the well, do you want to get well? And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really where it starts. I think we can read that line with judgment sometimes. Do you want to get well? But
Mm-hmm.
it's a legit question, and it is where it starts. And it's the question that you have to ask yourself, do you want to get well? Because there is connection that can come out of not being well. There's familiarity and discomfort when you have trauma. And we confuse familiarity for peace, and they're not the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So you really have to be honest about, do you want to get well? What are you willing to do? For me, I had to get to a point that I hated the way that I was living more than I feared the unknown.
Yeah, you actually said something before about having fear as an idol that I related with, because a lot of my years of life were fear. I mean, even it got worse after my dad was shot. Like I would have to arrive at any place at least an hour early, so I knew like where all exits were if something happened. And sometimes the anxiety of it would just overcome me to where I couldn't even do like things out in public. But now I just have faith that whatever is going to be is going to be. And I feel pretty confident that in God keeping me safe. And I don't want to not enjoy life. Like that's what fear is going to do. If you do start to, because when you said that, I was like, oh crap, I probably idolize fear too. And I never thought of it that I can't wait to tell my Bible girls this when we meet next week, because we were just talking about idols today, because we're in Isaiah and God talks a lot about that. It was almost like a mocking part in a way. You idolize what you're making out of wood, but you're, giving offerings and cooking your food and keeping warm with it. It doesn't have a mouth for breath and eyes to see. So how can it help you with anything? And it's like, well, that's the thing with fear. If that is what you're always putting in the forefront of your mind is how you're making decisions and how you're going to walk and do certain things. Yeah, that I was like, oh, god dang, she got me on that one. Because I think she's right.
Well, the thing is, and what's really fun is when people don't realize, because if I were to tell you, yeah, I can help you dismantle the stronghold of fear, you're like, but I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. What we don't realize is that most emotions, if you boil it down, comes down to two emotions: love and fear. Perfect love casts out fear. But it's more than just saying, let go and let God, or pray it away. It's more than just pray harder, have more faith. There are things that you can do to actually make that happen. It's just difficult to find those resources. Like there's so much noise that we don't really know what works, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you take a holistic approach, and it is mind, body, and well, you hear mind, body, and spirit. I believe the mind's part of the soul. So it's really soul, body, and spirit. You learn to recognize not only the fear, but where the emergency exits are. And that is kind of if you picture like a little kid and they're like holding hands with the parent and they're walking and they run off, but then they look and they can't find the parent, they get scared. It helps you find your way back faster. Like, that God's right here where you left them, and here's the emergency exit to get to them. And it can be life-changing. But fear is definitely, it's a form of it's a form of self-worship. And it's fascinating to get into the whole, how it all works, the mechanism of all of it. But what you need to know is, as someone who is struggling with it, is that it is not your identity. It is not who you are. It is not just the way God made you. It is a tool of the enemy. And it is something that you can capture and use to fuel you and your strengths and that support your values, instead of undermining yourself. And that's the beauty of when God comes into that, when God is the framework upon which we do that, there's no stopping it.
Yes, yes, yes. So good, Krystina. Thank you so much for sitting here with me today. I have really enjoyed our time.
Thank you. I have too. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Good. I'm so glad. All right, School of Hard Knocks, you know what to do. Go and find Krystina. Like she said before, she is on Linktree. So go to her Linktree, Breathe Life Coaching LLC. Go and follow her on all of the places. Check out the freebies that she has. Make sure you're supporting her, because there's more than enough room at the top of this mountain for everybody. And just like always, when you are walking with God, healing is always possible. I'll see you guys on the next episode. Mm-hmm. I'd like to thank you for sharing your time with me today. And I'm so proud of you for stepping into your healing journey. Please share this with every single person that you know. I'm here to make the biggest impact possible, and I can only do that with you by my side. I hope you hit that follow button and you save me to your library so you never miss an episode. We just took another break out of your wall, and remember, with God, healing is always possible. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.